Hello, hello, hello. So today we're talking about diagnosing faults with the Love Brewing 25 litre boiler. So there's multiple things that could go wrong, but luckily they very rarely do. If you are getting no output on the screen whatsoever, and it's just completely dead, no sound, first thing you want to do is check the cable. Now, if you've got a spare one, check that. If you've got something else that can take the kettle lead or IEC lead, check that. You could replace the fuse. There's a few different things you can do to confirm that the boiler is getting electricity and it's not the cabling. So that's the first thing to try. If your display is completely dead and there's no bleeps, no sounds, there's a couple of things or three things it could be. It could be the thermal fuse. That could have tripped, and that's a safety feature. They're rated at 200 degrees Celsius plus, so that they should never go. But if it does go, that kills power to all of this. The second, that you can replace yourself. The second thing will be what I call the main PCB. That's a big block PCB with lots of components on the inside that you can see, and that distributes the power to the actual screen. And then the second thing is then the screen as well, because that is actually a screen mounted on the PCB with these 4 switches. So it could be those things. So the thermal fuse you can fix yourself. You can get them on Amazon, eBay and other places. The screen PCB and the main PCB, you can't. For those, you'd need to speak to Love Brewing. They might charge you to send the boiler back to get it repaired. They might do it for free. They might be willing to sell or give you the parts yourselves. But obviously you'd need to speak to them. So that's the first thing. The next thing is the thermostat. That's the old button on the bottom you can press. Sometimes they break. Same thing as the T500 and the Air Steel, they can break over time. So those are readily available again on eBay, Amazon, AliExpress, or might be able to get it from your brewing shop. But those are easy, not a problem whatsoever. Now, if your screen's working, you're getting no error codes whatsoever, and it's saying it's heating, but you're doing that and there's just no lights and it's not heating, then that sounds to me like it's your switches that are gone. These are really quite solid things. They should work forever, but everything can break. So check those switches out. So what we'll do now is we'll get this onto the floor and then we'll take a look inside. Okay. Wait. Right. Before we go any further, I must stress the fact that obviously I'm not telling you to open these up. Only open up something that's electrical if you know what you're doing and you're competent in doing it. Do not take my advice of saying these are what you can replace as I'm allowing you to, and it's safe to. Obviously we're talking about mains electricity, things that could harm you, could kill you, could start a fire. So only open up if you know what you're doing and you are competent. Okay. If any doubts, speak to your brewing shop where you bought your boiler from, or an electrician. And please be careful, because obviously it is dangerous. All right, let's continue. So the first thing I want to do, remove the rubber cap and then the 3 inner part screws. Put all those in there and then put that to one side. And now you need to do the next 3. The reason why you do the inner part first is when you're putting this back together, quite often you're having to put your hand inside here. There's like an arm that this screws into, and it will be slightly disaligned, so you just have to put your hand in here to move it around. And it makes life a little bit easier. Now, when you're going to be putting this back together again, you literally do what we're doing now in reverse. Done. And lift and go. The way it works, obviously your plug goes in here, and then earth comes out to this arm here, another cable comes off to the frame and the screw there, so now the whole chassis is earth. We have, I believe it's neutral. I could be wrong. Or it's live. I can't remember, to be honest. But one comes along here through to the thermal fuse. Now, this thermal fuse is like this. This one is rated at 216 amps. So the electricity goes through the thermal fuse, and into the PCB, which then powers it up. This should never blow. If it does, it is literally a blow, throw it in the bin. What you can do is if you unscrew this small little nut and then remove this holding plate, you can then pull this piece up. This is just like a heat protective cover. You can put sleeve, you can pull that off, and underneath that will be one of these. Obviously you might have to trim the metal cable a bit, but then you can replace this inside there. These can be bought on Amazon, eBay, and a lot of electronics or electrical shops online, because a lot of devices use these. So obviously if this doesn't power up, doesn't do anything at all, and your cable's fine, check for this, because that could be the issue. So that then puts up to the main PCB to power that up. And then the other cable comes through to the heating element. So this is the way that's always got it on. And then that comes off onto the switch, which then goes to another cable to the other switch. And that's to power the lights. So it's all ready. And then part of that then goes off to the main PCB to give it then the other. So you've got live and neutral going to the board. So that's now charged. And then the other part comes off to the thermostat. It gets fed through to the PCB. So if this triggers, this will no longer get electricity to the board, and you'll get an error code up on the screen stating that there's no electricity coming from here, so it knows the thermostat's gone. It's just 2 screws to pop that off. Let's do that now. So if your thermostat goes, if you constantly keep getting the, I forget which, it was in the guide, it says about the reset plunger switch on the bottom. But if you keep getting that error code up, then it could be the thermostat's actually broken. So you'll need to actually replace the whole thermostat. Now this just comes off like that. And what that is it's 2 long screws with some spacers over it. And that's it. So it is nice and simple. And then you've got obviously a rubber connector that goes onto it. It's spring loaded. Nice. Now once you've removed that, you will then be able to see the thermostat properly, and this will just lift off. Now it will have heat sink transfer compound gunk all over it, and it will be all at the bottom again. If it is really sticky still, you can scrape it all off with a flat blade screwdriver and then put it on your replacement. This is a replacement. Now this one's rated at 130 degrees Celsius, and I've seen them between 125 to I think 135 on the T500 and the Love Brewing Boilers. The way it works is electricity will flow through here as a closed circuit. When this goes above that temperature, this will trip and that switch will pop up. If you try and push it back down to reset it, it will jump straight back up again because it still says it's too hot. I think most of these are rated at 80 degrees Celsius. So as long as it goes below 80 degrees Celsius, it will allow you to trip it. Now they do break. Unfortunately, they do break. You can get these again on Amazon, eBay, AliExpress, and a lot of other companies. Cookers, kettles, all sorts use these. But just check that the 1 volt, the ampage is the same. And 2, as you can see, the holding part is higher. Some of them are flush to the base, and some of them are movable. You don't want that. You want it so it looks. There we go. It's better. Exactly like that. So once you've replaced it, you can then just stick that back on there and stick the blades down. Now you can replace these switches. These are just push-on little connectors, so you might need to get a flat blade screwdriver or pliers to go underneath there just to pop them off. Sometimes they won't necessarily come off with your hand as easily. You can replace the switches as well. They've got little plastic risers. You have to just push down, and then you can then squeeze and then push the switch out. The thermometer, you can't replace that. That's a custom part from Love Brewing. The main PCB, you can't replace. That's a custom part from Love Brewing. And the same thing as the display. To remove the PCB, there's 1 screw here and 1 screw there, and that will then just fall off. And then to get to the actual PCB for the screen, then there's 1, 2, 3, and 1 at the bottom 4 screws. That will then lift this plastic away, and the front plastic will then also come away. It's like it's sandwiching between. Any of these cables can be replaced. It's just bog standard. I don't know whether it's 10 amp or 16 amp, but it's quite basically it's high temperature resistant cabling. And you can get that anywhere. That's really good. And the same things, these are just using standard circular, not spade, but I forget what they're called, little plates, which you can just either solder on or use crimps. And most of it is just bog standard parts, apart from the PCBs, and the cables are just cables. And that's it, really. So all you should need to really worry about is potentially replacing the thermostat, if that ever blew, or the thermal fuse. Both of them are very easily available. The switches is finding one that's the right size. That would be the harder part. But again, they're just standard stock parts. And that's it, really. Nice and easy. So don't forget, so when you put your main ring on, you might need to put your hand inside, and then you could just wiggle these around, so that way the screw will actually align up with the hole. Aside from that, it is very simple. This base can lift up, and you can wiggle it around a bit. So just make sure that the actual screen isn't right beside or right on top of the water outlet. So when you do open it up, you're not going to get water everywhere. But otherwise, it's kind of got a free movement to move it to the direction you actually want to do. Right, and then to put the boiler back together again, just follow those steps in reverse by putting in the base first, then the inner lid. Now, what I would also recommend to you is reaching out to Love Brewing if you do get a problem with the boiler, even if it's outside of warranty. I've been a customer of Love Brewing for 8-10 years or so, and they've been amazing for me. Now, I'm pretty sure that my experience won't necessarily be the same experience you've had, but even if, say, you're outside of warranty, give them a shout. They might be able to advise you how to fix it, or they might be able to offer some advice or anything, but just reach out to them first before you start tampering with it, because you never know. They might want to help and be able to help a lot quicker and cheaper than you doing it yourself. All right, well, I hope you found this helpful. See you next time.